Now, and I kept thinking to myself, if I could make this work on my tractor, I wouldn't have to buy a plow truck. And what I could do is get chains for the rear wheels. Once I figured out what I needed, I kind of went on a big search trying to find this plow. This thing can go around 360 degrees, so I could plow backwards if I wanted to. But it pivots. It's also a wider blade, and it pivots to where I don't have to get off the road to scrape the edges of our road. So I was really hoping those tire chains would work, but I think this is most of my problem solved.
The long-term plan was to always get a plow truck. But while I'm always searching for deals, the absolute worst time to buy a plow truck's in the middle of a snowstorm. But with the snow getting as deep as it is, it's time to take things into consideration for the long term. I just drove about 100 miles to pick up this old beater 75 Chevy truck with a plow on it. Everything works. It's rusted just about everywhere it can be rusted. I have a bit of a soft spot in my heart for these old square body Chevys. I've only had about 12 of them. But the hydraulics work on the plow and it runs. That's really all I care about. So now I just got to get back up to the ranch without getting pulled over and put her to work. I checked the differential fluids, transfer case, transmission, greased the U-joints. So I noticed the front U-joint on the front drive shaft was a little bit sloppy, so I replaced it. Now I've never ran a plow truck before, but since we've owned this property, I've used everything from my old Ford tractor with a scraper blade to my backhoe to try and keep the road open. It looks like we're gonna have a good year for snow. I've got to be able to plow the road and plow it fast. While thinking about this snowblower, I've convinced myself that I could build some sort of a contraption that would fit on the front of a truck and be used in a way where we could drive forward instead of backwards. I drove out to the guy's house and looked it over and quickly realized I needed to take it home. An auxiliary hydraulic pump that will turn the snowblower and have the option to remove both if needed. At least that's how I see it in my head. We've literally had to learn the hard way on what works and what does not work up here when it comes to snow removal. In the beginning, it was a matter of using what we had on hand, which was that old Ford diesel tractor. But at that time, it was not as critical as it is now to keep the road open. I literally made like 2 passes with that old Ford tractor before I realized that there's no way that thing was going to keep up, especially being 2-wheel drive and without tire chains. But again, at that time we hadn't even started on the house, so it wasn't that critical. Once it became critical for me to get up here and to continue to be able to work through winter, I used the backhoe quite a bit. That's one thing I didn't show in the first part of the video. I would use that New Holland backhoe to keep the road open. Using that backhoe, the road became very narrow. In fact, so narrow that 2 cars could not pass. So we had to dig out an area where 2 cars could pass if need be. Because nobody was living up here at that time, it really wasn't that critical. Two years ago is when I picked up that first square body plow truck. That truck had been used on flat ground in 2-wheel drive on a used car lot down in Salt Lake for many years. The 4-wheel drive did not work on it. It needed a front drive shaft to get it working. Once I got the drive shaft in place and I started using it, having tire chains on all 4 wheels, and as rusty as that truck already was, it literally started to rattle apart. It was a half-ton truck, and I was constantly breaking parts on it. I managed to make it work through that winter, but I knew that before my wife and kids were living up here, I needed to find something more dependable. Last year, I picked up this 1994 F-250 with an 8-foot plow blade on it. While it had a few minimal repairs needed, it's never let us down. A few weeks ago, I took that old plow truck down to the local mechanic and had him go from one end to the other and service anything and everything that could possibly fail. He changed the transmission filter and added new transmission fluid to it. He did an oil change. He actually fixed the exhaust leak. He checked the U-joints. He serviced everything that needed attention, ensuring that we don't have any problems with that truck when we need it most this year. Now, as you just saw, I put some brand new tires on that truck as well. I found a very aggressive set of mud terrain tires that would fit the plow truck, and they were quite a bit cheaper than they would have been new, and getting that new set of tires on the plow truck was really the last thing that it needed. Now I'm able to plow down the road with enough speed to throw the snow off the road, keeping the road wide enough for 2 cars to pass. And while that truck does a wonderful job with the road, it does not do a very good job with the detail work around the house. I wanted to put a plow on the side-by-side. I went down to the local dealership and got a quote on having a winch and a plow installed on the 6x6, and the quote was about $1,500. The problem is they couldn't get to it for at least 2 weeks. Me being who I am, I then jumped on the local internet, found a snowplow that would fit the 6x6 for $350. Then I went down and bought a brand new winch for another $160, and I decided I would install it myself. The snowplow that I bought is 72 inches wide. That's 6 feet. This will be perfect for that side-by-side. When it came to mount the snowplow to the side-by-side, I couldn't find the right mounting plate because it is in fact an older side-by-side. I did find the right winch mount, but I quickly discovered that both of these pieces were just flat steel for the most part. The only snowplow mount that I could find that even looked like it would work was $100. The winch mount was $50. I ran over to the local scrapyard and I spent $8 on some C-channel, and I figured out that I could make both mounts out of this piece of steel. The mount that I'm going to build for the snowplow may not be as pretty as the mount that I could have ordered, but that's really not a factor. To me, more than anything, I needed to get the side-by-side ready to move snow because we have snow coming. Had I bought both of those mounts, they were at least 7 to 10 days out with shipping. I don't necessarily care what it looks like. I simply care how it performs and how it's going to hold up. Had I installed the winch a couple of weeks back, when I slid off the road while trying to get to the cabin, I could have winched myself right back onto the road and saved a whole bunch of time. So getting the winch installed is beneficial for more than just plowing snow. We have most definitely learned the hard way with some of these things, these first few years living up here. Even that snowblower that we picked up, while it worked, there was no way we were driving 2.5 miles backwards with that thing on the back of a tractor. That alone would probably take me a day to keep the road clean. The plow truck that we have now is perfect. It's just nice enough that it gets the job done, but it's not so nice that I feel bad when I'm rubbing up against trees as I'm trying to keep the road as wide as I can while plowing. Many of you guys have messaged me recommending that I find an old, city, medium-duty plow truck that might also have a dump bed on the back of it. And while these things go to the auction regularly, and sometimes they're not very expensive at all, the problem with a big medium-duty truck like that is I would not be able to safely plow at the speed that I need to plow to throw the snow as far off the road as I need to. If I rolled over a medium-duty plow truck like that, I may not walk away from it. If you were following us last winter, you saw that I nearly tipped the F-250 over, and truthfully, I was never really in that much danger of rolling that truck. But because that F-250 sits much closer to the ground, it's the safer way to plow the snow. we are in for some significant snow over the next few days. This coming Sunday's video should be Cedar and I getting back to some of the things on the inside of the house that she wants to get done over winter, assuming I'm not plowing snow for the next 2 days.
Okay, fireside chat by the fire this time instead of out in the cold cabin. But we're going to talk about the wood stove, why we chose the wood stove that we did. We chose the brand Low-Bi. Let's talk about that. And why we did wood stove versus like heated flooring, central heat or rocket mass stove. We get asked that quite a bit. So explain why we went with what we did.
So I could have easily put the piping in both the house and the shop for a radiant floor system, and it would have only cost me a few $100s. But to finish that system off, especially if it's a good quality boiler, if it's a good system, we would spend probably in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $10,000. When we first built the house, we didn't have extra money to throw at that.
We were kind of in a hurry too. We were ready to get out of your mom's house and ready to
be up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but more than anything, everything that we do, whether it's the solar system, whether it's the plumbing, we've just tried to keep it simple. If heaven forbid, if at some point something happens to me and I'm not here, I don't want things to be so complicated that Cedar can't figure out what to do. Maybe someday our kids end up in this place, and we very easily could buy another 1,000-gallon propane tank, fill that thing up, and put central heat in if we wanted to.
And we talked about that maybe years down the road if it gets to that point.
If I get to where I'm so worn out that I can't get up the hill and chop wood, we probably shouldn't live up here. but we could.
We've been really happy with the wood stove. It's pretty consistent. In fact, most of the times it can be pretty hot in here, especially when we have people over. We end up opening the windows because we all spend most of the time down here in this room, and it gets pretty toasty. Sometimes we really do open the windows.
So right above us, the furthest place away from the wood stove is the master bedroom, which is our bedroom over here. We have a vent that goes right above the wood stove into our bedroom, and it's blocked off right now. We don't even have it open, partly because I kind of prefer to be a little bit cooler. I sleep better. We have a heavy quilt that we'll throw on our bed if it gets that bad. We haven't even gotten to that point.
Mm-hmm.
The kids,
yeah, they have vents in their rooms too. And in fact, the boys, they always complain about how hot their room is because the chimney goes through their room.
Yeah, so. The kids, Reed dresses like it's summertime. I mean, he'll come downstairs.
He doesn't like to be hot at all.
Yeah, he'll have a shirt off and whatever. But more than anything, we have an abundance of wood. The next question in the wood burning little niche is around these rocket mass stoves. And again, to me, it's a little complicated, some of that stuff, and they have a tendency to take up a lot of space. This Low-Pi stove, when it was, if I tried to buy this stove now, they're like $5,000 to $7,000, depending on where you buy them. They've been making the same, I think it's the #1 selling wood burning stove in the United States, like the last 25 years running, something like that. I paid $100 for it, because I had to drive a few hours south to get it, because in a lot of the bigger cities, there's restrictions on wood burning stoves. We don't have that here. So I would love to get a newer version of this stove, but the truth is we load it up, we close the damper, we choke the oxygen off down low, and when Cedar wakes up to get the kids ready for school, it's typically 68, 67 degrees.
There'll still be a bunch of coals in there, and then you just reload it, and it starts right back up.
I've been getting up around 3 o'clock in the morning to take Ruby out to go to the bathroom, and I'll throw a chunk or two in there. But especially with the maple, it's more often than not, like right now, it's probably 73, 74 degrees in here, which is too warm. The other night I was out in the shop working, and Cedar and Callie were doing something, and I came in and it was 78 degrees in here, and they had open windows. So So anyway, it's a simplicity. It's making use of what we have around us. It's keeping in mind again that if I'm not here, that my wife and kids can handle their responsibilities. Or again, if at some point one of our kids ends up with this place, that it's just not complicated. And I don't want to be any more dependent on propane than we already are. We could warm up food on the stove. If something catastrophic did happen and we couldn't get propane, we can still warm up food on the stove. And so
water or anything.
Or water, yeah. It's a thorough heat. It's a unique heat. And so we enjoy it. We don't have any plans to change other than to maybe find a newer version of this stove at some point down the road.
And bigger? Would you go bigger?
There's no need to. This is a 2,000 square foot stove, which is basically what our house is. So
perfect size.
Anyway, good question.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Keep them coming. We'll keep answering. Thanks.
Merry Christmas from Red Poppy Ranch.
Merry Christmas from Red Poppy Ranch.
Merry Christmas from Red Poppy Ranch.
Reedy, you didn't do it. What's this? Bye, Red Puppy Ranch.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
See you next year. Don't you go falling over on the